All right, thank you, sir. So, good afternoon, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order at 1:45 p.m. As is our typical practice, the board met earlier today to discuss matters of an in-camera nature pursuant to section 44(1)(b) and 44(2) of the Community Safety and Policing Act, which enumerates the grounds upon which the board can go in camera. Disclosures of interest from anybody on the board. If there's any conflicts or disclosures with regards to anything that matters before us today, this would be the time to declare your conflict. Seeing none. Is there any new business that any board members want to add to the agenda for today? If so, please let me know. Seeing none. In your package, you have the minutes from our last board meeting in January. Are there any additions, deletions, substitutions with regards to the minutes of the January 16, 2025 meeting? Vice Boss?
Yes, just one. Under verbal updates, number 6, just where Vice Chair Walker provided an update on her attendance swearing in ceremony along with Member Goss. She also mentioned, and not to speak for you, but Member Lehman was also in attendance. So just for that as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice Chair Goss. Any other revisions or substitutions or additions to the minutes included in the package?
One minor.
Yep.
Just on that second paragraph there, just the word should be emotional instead of emotion. That's all.
Which where is that?
So right here, second paragraph of number 6, the event was described.
Yes.
Small mind. Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goss. Any other revisions to the minutes? All right, seeing none, I'll just need a motion to accept the minutes and approve the minutes from the last board meeting. That's moved by Vice Chair Goss, seconded by Member Walker. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. So just a couple notes. Okay.
Is it general?
Is he okay?
So
So just our members just online. Member Nancy Branscombe is online. Member Morgan is also online. So if to both Member Morgan and Member Branscombe, if you need to get my attention because you want to weigh in, I'll try to regularly look up. But if you need anything, just put your hand up or do something. I don't know. Okay, so minutes have been approved. Going through the agenda, we have agenda item number 2, which is the London Police Service Board committee assignments. So, okay. Okay, so every year, there's board members that sit on different panels, different committees. So I wanted to take this opportunity just to canvass the board right now. We have for example, our anti-racism advisory panel, our HR committee, is there any committee that members would like to sit on, or is everybody content staying on the same committee assignments that they had last year? I just wanted to canvass the board to find out whether there was any desire to sit on the committee. Yep, Member Branscombe. Oh, you're muted, Nancy.
Sorry, Chair. I don't see the list, but I know we talked about starting a finance committee, and I would like to sit on that also.
Okay, so perfect. This is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation here. So we would be looking at the potential of creating a finance committee. Okay, are there any other committees that the board would give consideration to create? So there's a finance committee. Is there anything else in addition to finance that the board would want to consider as a potential committee? And if the answer is no, that's absolutely fine, but I know that.
Yeah. We have a lot of different.
Perfect. So let me start with this. Let me start with this question. So everybody who's currently on a committee or a panel right now is content to just kind of subscribe for another year of being on that panel. All right. So is that okay? All right. So we'll have that captured, that the committee assignments will continue on for the 2025 year. And all the current members will stay on the current committees. And then, so we'll go on to the second issue, which is, so Member Branscombe's raised the issue of creating a finance committee. Is there an appetite? Is there a desire to do so? And if okay, so
So
go ahead.
Yes, I think it's absolutely essential. I was just wondering if maybe we could defer the nominations for that committee until both member Layman and member Morgan are back, if that's okay, just because, well, member Morgan's online, but member Layman is not able to attend today, so just so we have a full complement, if that's all right.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goss. Member Branscombe, are you okay if we defer this to the next board meeting and then we can have a fulsome discussion and then potentially create the committee and get committee members on that newly
Sure.
created committee?
Sure, because we'll need to develop it once we get it going in terms of reference and so on, so.
Precisely, terms of reference, mandate, scope, parameters, the whole,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards there. Okay, so if Stephanie or Mel, if you can just make a note that we'll bring this forward at the March board meeting for further discussion, and we'll go from there. So, okay, and I don't think we need a motion to that effect. We'll just make note of it in the minutes and we'll bring it forward at the March meeting. Perfect. Thank you very much for that discussion. So moving on in the agenda, we have the Digital Evidence Management Project Report, body worn camera implementation presentation. I'm looking over to you, Deputy Chief McSween.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd just like to invite Inspector Brent Lipsky and Project Manager Chris Esteban to the podium. The gentlemen are going to present, provide an update, I should say, on the Digital Evidence Advancement Project. And will also provide a current situational report pertaining on the status of the project and projected timelines for the remaining project initiatives. As we go through the presentation, if there's any questions, they can be directed to Chris or Brent. And then at the end, if there's any additional questions that we can answer.
Thank you.
Allow them both to introduce themselves.
Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. And to the board, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to provide an update on the Digital Evidence Advancement Project. So as the deputy mentioned, I'm Brent Lipsky. I'm the inspector of our Strategic Services Branch. The Strategic Services Branch houses or is the home to our police professional project managers. Chris Esteban here is the project manager for the Digital Evidence Advancement Project. And before he introduces himself, I do want to highlight to the board because sometimes our police professionals are a little less visible than our sworn members. Chris is an absolutely crucial part of this team and really is the reason why we are where we are. He also answers the hard questions if you have any. I stick with the basic stuff.
Good afternoon, board. As Inspector Lipsky had mentioned, my name is Chris Esteban. I am the project manager of the Digital Evidence Advancement Project. I've been with London Police for roughly 3 years, but as a whole, in terms of policing, I have over 20 years of experience both in RCMP as well as. So thank you again for giving us the time and opportunity to provide a status update of our project.
So I know everybody was given the PowerPoint advance. So we're just going to take some time to go through that, and I'll add some context to the slides that have been provided. And skip forward. Sure.
That's up there. You're probably using your computer, right?
I am.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, thank you.
That was the first top question, right?
See, Chris was supposed to step in. So the Digital Evidence Advancement Project, there's five main components to this. The DEMS, the Digital Evidence Management System. We'll speak to each of these a little further. The body worn cameras, which obviously is the one thing that creates probably the most interest. Our interview camera systems, the in-car cameras, and e-notes. So this diagram here just kind of shows the relationship of everything. So the DEMS part in the middle, the e.com. So this is the platform that manages everything. Think of this as the heart of the entire system. So this houses our digital evidence, manages the digital evidence, allows for the sharing with the Crown, with other partner agencies. This is what really drives a huge efficiency increase for the service. The individual products, the body worn cameras, the in-car cameras, the interviews, and the e-notes, those all feed off of the DEMS, but the DEMS is the heart of it. So I kind of think of it like an iceberg where you don't really see the DEMS platform. The largest portion of this entire system is kind of underwater. So That's just how they all work. They all interrelate. There's other systems and technologies that we may look at moving forward but everything will eventually feed off of that DEMS platform. Yeah. So just to have a look at our timeline here. So the timeline that's highlighted, that was the timeline laid out at the outset of this project. And one of our goals obviously was to stay on that time frame. Back in the spring, we spoke, and one of the things I said to Chris is like, come on, we want to say that we're beating this. So we worked very hard at that, and I'm very happy that I get to say that today. So phase one, we've kind of moved through phase one now, which was the implementation of the first 20 body-worn cameras, our interview camera systems, and the first 10 in-car cameras, which have the automatic license plate readers. Phase two, we move into a larger mass deployment of our body cameras with the expectation of 250 in around Q3 and another 188 by Q1 of 2026, leading into readiness work to outfit the remaining fleet with in-car cameras and the implementation of nodes. Q1 2027 is the target to go live with 150 in-car camera systems, and then Q3 of 27 is the completion of the project. All of these, sorry, put on here. So all of these, how do I go back? No?
At the bottom, you should just be able to go back with that little,
All right.
that one there.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Sorry, trying to work two computers here. It's not. Okay. So the key to this time frame, or this timeline, is it was developed with a lot of flexibility. So we have the flexibility to add cameras in whatever pace kind of works with the overall project. So that's been turned out to be a really, really pivotal design feature that Chris is responsible for. So why did we phase this? And this is a big question. A lot of people internally have asked this. Why are we putting out 20 cameras at once or 40 cameras at a time? And there's some real key pieces to this. So the training and onboarding, there is a huge amount of effort that is required to train all of our sworn frontline members in this organization. They have to be trained on the Axon systems, the mobile device integrations, policies and procedures, and then the operational implementation of the camera themselves. And we're working with people who are on all different schedules and have different workload restrictions on that. So that is one of the reasons why doing this in blocks really, really helps. System testing and troubleshooting. So we're in that stage and the redaction disclosure right now. So the initial users, it's been fantastic, have been able to, on a smaller scale, identify pinch points and different system settings and things that with a group of 20 or a group of 40 are not significant. They're small things that we can be agile and we can respond and correct those things now. And then as we roll out more and more cameras, those problems are much less significant for us. The redaction and disclosure. So again, kind of like I spoke about DEMS is the piece that's unseen. This is a massive, massive issue. We've been able to develop a program which is working very well, but all that video that gets ingested, anything that is going to be disclosed for court purposes, it has to be viewed, it has to be redacted, it has to be disclosed properly. And this takes significant effort. So we have created a digital disclosure unit, and they've done a fantastic job of training and getting up to speed and working with the Crown to make all this happen. But that again, this phased implementation has supported that. And the last key on this slide, and this is huge, right? We want to ensure success. The last thing we wanted to do as a project team was to say, Chief, sorry, but we have to take a pause, or even worse, we have to roll back. So we have liaised with all the services through the province who have implemented body cams, DEMS, and the number one kind of word of warning that we received was don't go too big. And those who have had to pause their programs or roll them back, that's the common thread, is that we just tried to go too big, too quick, and weren't able to react to unforeseen issues. So we'd like to have Chris turn to cover that. Okay. Excellent. Where are we right now? So all of our interview room camera systems have been converted. They're all operational. They're all running off the new system, integrated with DEMS. All of our CID members and everybody that uses those have been trained. Our initial deployment of 23 body cameras was complete. They were operational since January 20th. That initial deployment went very well. Any issues we had were very minor. They've been corrected, we responded, and we have been able to move up our deployment. So we've added an additional 25 cameras ahead of schedule. They are now out. That has gone seamlessly. Everybody's happy. And we are now preparing our training plan to train the rest of our sworn membership so that we can speed this up even more. Chris will get mad at me if I say this, but I believe we will smash our targets and we will have everything rolled out well ahead of his timeline. But
Mel, can you have that reflected?
Chris, right now,
It's official now.
It's a lot of weight in my shoulder.
and as I mentioned before, we have our first 10 in-car camera systems are fully installed. They are ready to be deployed. Right now, we're just working on developing the appropriate procedure and operations for that. Okay, so where are we headed? As I mentioned, the training. So that's a huge piece that requires a lot of effort. So we're working on that right now, but we are well positioned and we will be training the remaining frontline members by the beginning of March. We're preparing for a third deployment of body cameras. Was hoping to do that by the end of February, so I think we're on target for that. Planning subsequent body cam deployments. We will continue the phased approach. One of the really important things is as we put them out, we then get feedback from our disclosure unit to say, yes, we're good, we can handle this. It's a good amount of work for us. And then when they say, okay, we're ready, then we're ready to continue to deploy more and more cameras. So those deployments I anticipate will continue throughout March, April, May. As I said, we'll accelerate the timeline. The completion of procedures and user guides to implement our first 10 in-car cameras, which everything there should be ready by mid-March. The other piece that's not on here, but I will say a very significant element to this is change management. This, as it's a big issue for the community, but this is a tremendous amount of change for our organization in what is really a very short amount of time. So managing that and communicating with members and keeping everybody informed has been a big piece of this as well. This part here is how we're doing. So unfortunately, we haven't been doing this long enough to provide any metrics that would have any reliability. The scale at the moment is still too small, but I will share some points here, which are observations that are anecdotal. So this is based on feedback from our members who are using these systems. So our CID members, thrilled with the interview room cameras. They report a great increase in video quality, ease of use, efficiency improvements, having the auto transcription of those interview room cameras. We no longer need a second investigator to sit with the sole purpose of listening and taking notes. Significant time savings with frontline members, being able to conduct taking witness statements using their body worn camera as opposed to typed statements on the computer. Increased quality of those statements, veracity of the statements. That hasn't related itself to the core process yet. We haven't had enough time, but I would expect that we get similar comments from Crown. And positive response that our members have received from community members who have interacted with officers wearing the body cameras. As we move forward, we are definitely looking to metrics that we can measure There's changes in the prevalence or nature of public complaints before and after the implementation of these systems. Frequency of video assisting in resolution of complaints corresponding to the time required to complete investigations and reach a resolution. And another big piece is reduction. Is there a reduction in time that frontline officers are spending completing administrative work? And is there a corresponding increase in community engagement, proactive policing? And then any related impacts or decreased administrative work for frontline officers, and then any effect that may have on time on calls and call response times. Barring anything from Chris, that's all I have had. So if there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to respond.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Inspector Lipsky and Chris, for the presentation. And knowing this board, we'll have some questions for you. Colleagues, do we have any questions for Inspector Lipsky or Chris? So we'll look at Vice Chair Goss to start.
Perfect. So thank you very much for the presentation, Inspector Lipsky. It's like you know me well. I'm all about doing things quicker, frankly, and but at the same time doing it right. So I like that there is the desire to implement faster if we can. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the body worn cameras. So a lot of people ask me, knowing that I'm on the board, about how footage is going to be seen. And of course, they watch television and they see in the States that it's released, but obviously Canada's a bit different. And without putting you too much on the spot, can you kind of talk about what the public can expect when that footage is being used in comparison to what they might see on television, for example?
Absolutely. Our privacy laws are, I would say, much more robust than the US when it comes to these footages. And our procedures are very, very tight. So the reality is the vast majority of body cam footage that is created will just exist in the system until such time that it is appropriately purged. It will never really be seen. The only footage that will be seen is anything related to a court prosecution that gets disclosed, an FOI request, complaints, investigations, that type of thing. So the majority of our video really it will be collected, it will exist, it will be there if it is necessary, but it even internally really won't be viewed. There's very strict restrictions within the system on who can access video and when they can access it. So even our own members, only for investigative purposes will they be able to view any of this footage. Everything can be privatized, everything can be made confidential. If there's anything of a sensitive nature, that's exactly what happens. So even our own members can't access that video without authorization.
Follow-up?
Yes.
So you mentioned in your presentation that change management is an important part of this. So, especially in a short period of time. So if my math is correct, there's currently 48 body worn cameras that have been deployed. Am I right on that?
Very close, yeah, it's approximately 48.
Yeah, 48. What's the feedback from the members so far on it? And I noticed that you said the public the reception seems to be good. Any initial concerns, or is everything kind of moving along?
Yeah, no, the response from the membership's been fantastic. I think people would have anticipated it, and I spoke to a community group of leaders from the hospitals, and I always said, like, imagine walking into your workplace and telling them, hey, we're going to strap a camera on everybody and watch what you do all day, right? But the membership has actually responded very, very well. They certainly appreciate any increase in efficiency and being able to use the body cams for evidence collection, taking statements. So I'm very pleased with the response of our membership.
And just one last follow-up, Chair. And this is maybe directed to one of the deputies if you're not able to answer, Inspector, but of course, and we have 4 reports coming to us of SIU investigations as well. So this is going to be a key component of these cameras, whether it be interview rooms, whether it be in-car cameras, whether it be these body-worn cameras. Do you see this as cutting down time that SIU investigations are taking, both for the accountability of the public, but also, the stress that an investigation puts on the membership as well? Are these going to be tools that are going to be utilized by the SIU?
Yes, and we haven't had a situation arise since we started that would test that. But information we've received from other services is that it does have a significant impact on the time required to reach a resolution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goss. Member Walker.
Thank you. That's so interesting. And Chris, I'd like to ask you a question. If
Sure.
it's okay.
Yep, I'll go.
Because a lot of this is out of my knowledge base. I'm not really technologically, I'm not, I shouldn't say not really, I am not technological in any way.
For sure.
But I'm interested, in hearing from you about, like, tech being, I mean, it seems like this whole thing is dependent on good technology, right? So what happens if like, what are the things that are in place to prevent the technology from going down?
So with respects to redundancy, I think that's a overall question that we're asking, specifically with DEX, evidence management. As Inspector Lipsky noted in his presentation, that is really the heart of the system. That is where all of the evidence, video, audio, photo is stored. Axon has implemented multiple redundancy systems or measures to ensure that DEMS does not go offline. Since we have started this project, we spoke with many agencies ranging from Toronto Police, from Ontario to Alberta, RCMP and BC. And some of the feedback that we've gathered was that since Toronto has used, specifically talking to TPS, since they've had the system in 2014, I believe of this year, they have only can think of one occasion where digital evidence management, their DEM system has gone down or it has become inaccessible. So with respects to situations regarding inability to access DEMS, there is security measures that Axon has taken place to ensure that does not come into fruition.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
I just have a couple other questions. So, and I'm not sure who this should go to, but I trust you'll respond to whoever's appropriate. So one of the things that I keep hearing about with this technology is that it helps officers, because if an officer is punched or falsely accused of something, or is accused of something, and we don't know if it's false or not, you can look at that technology and determine what actually happened. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And that's also consistent with the DEMS, so that if there's not likely to be any problems where it goes offline, or there is it, what about if an officer tries to put it offline, like dismantle it in some way?
Can't happen.
Okay,
So officers have no ability to delete, modify video in any
okay,
way.
and I'm not insinuating that would
No.
happen, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's that. Everything is very tightly regulated.
Okay, and then I just have one last question. So you said that you can put it into like a no man's or woman's zone, where if somebody has confidential information, it doesn't have to go live across the whole service. Is that, is that description accurate, do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, so what would happen then? How does that work? So does somebody have to come in and say, you know, I can't let this person know, or like, how does it work? What is the criteria involved for hiding the information versus just naturally going ahead with the interview?
So we may be talking a couple different things here.
Oh.
So everything, just as with all data, can be restricted or made confidential depending on the nature of it. But the officer, right from the outset, if they, in the course of their duties, they were to capture an image or a circumstance on their body camera that they feel is, maybe they've got somebody in a compromising position or something, they right from the start can flag that as a sensitive material, and it'll be restricted right from the beginning. So any officer has the ability to recognize that, this is something that we want to control, and right from the get-go, as soon as that video is uploaded to the system, it's immediately restricted.
So here's the thing, what if people don't know that can happen? So let's say, I have no idea that I have a choice, that I can say this is very sensitive material that I'm disclosing or whatever. I don't want it going out to the full department. Like, are there any checks and balances in place to make sure that what you've just described is available to everybody, that description? Listen, if you are uncomfortable with this going out for whatever reason, maybe they're under threat or something like that, they know that they can say that and it will not go through the entire system.
So our procedures already prohibit officers from viewing anything that they don't need to view for investigative purpose. The Axon system also has a very, very robust audit trail. So we know every single thing that anybody views, accesses, tries to access. So that gets audited too. There's automatic audits of that system.
But what if they don't want that to happen? Like, let's say if somebody discloses a ton of information and maybe their partner or something is a police officer and they have to make sure that that police officer is not going to open that information or they, could suffer in some way. Like, how do they know that they can come forward and say, I don't want this information going out into the full police service? Or is that possible?
Is it possible? Anything that's communicated to the frontline officer who's obtaining that evidence, that officer knows what their ability is and what their responsibilities are. And they say that information can be made confidential right from that very first point.
Okay, I'm just trying to find a way, because it doesn't seem that there's a policy in place to make sure that everybody who is interacting with the officer knows that they do have the ability to say, this cannot go out. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I think I do, and we do.
And it's more than just a privacy issue
Sure.
I'm talking about. It's like maybe for some people life and death, I don't know.
We do have policies in place that govern all different kinds of confidential information and circumstances where we obtain that information. And this evidence doesn't get dealt with really differently than any other confidential evidence that we've collected over the years. We have processes in place to ensure that that information is always kept
So I don't
secure.
think I'm making myself clear, and maybe it's because I just don't understand. What I'm just trying to find out, you said something else just a few minutes ago, that as soon as it's done, it goes out into the system, right?
Yes.
So I'm somebody that is running away from harm. And I'm running away from somebody who is, who's a good friend of a police officer. They, under no circumstances, can know where I'm staying or running away to or from. So how does that person know that they can say to the officer that this is highly confidential? Because a lot of people wouldn't know that on their own, and you're not to share it. And I think I'm not making myself clear. Am I making myself clear, or am I confusing this whole situation? I'm confusing it.
I think I do understand what you're getting at, and the answer at this point, I'm not sure how people necessarily know that, but I can tell you in my 23 years as a police officer in the city, people typically, in my experience, have expressed that. And the minute there's a safety concern, the minute anything like that is expressed, our officers know exactly what to do with that information to protect it.
Well, I'll just take that for now, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And I certainly appreciate this presentation and the time you've given me, so thank you.
Thank you.
Those are tougher questions than how do I slide back? So it's a technical question, yes. All right, well, before I go on to the next speaker's list, Chief?
I just want to add, Chair, through you, you raised some important points, Walker, and I kind of see where you're going from. There's a number of circumstances, and I hope I can assist in providing you with some comfort in your questions. So if we're looking at policies and procedures, the policies and the procedures already govern the application of the body-worn camera. In your circumstance, if an officer encounters an individual who is very concerned, she's in a situation where she needs help, and the body-worn camera captures that interaction, and she wants to make sure that it doesn't get out there that she's talking to the police, because it's going to put her life in jeopardy. There's a number of circumstances that we would be looking at. If it's a criminal investigation, if we end up into a criminal investigation, there are disclosure obligations, and those disclosure obligations are weighed and vetted because we have an obligation to protect that individual. So if we go into the realm, and I'm going to give one avenue that might not be what you're thinking, but I'm trying to demonstrate everything is circumstantial. If we go into an avenue where that individual turns out to be an informant or
Yeah.
provides informant information. The Supreme Court of Canada, there's a leading case called Leaper. That's the leading case that we sort of governs informant privilege with law enforcement. There's principles in that we have to abide by. And essentially, and I am not a lawyer, but I will say the privilege of an informer is almost absolute. So we have to do everything we can to protect the identity of that informant, or that informant. There's a recent case from CBC in the Supreme Court of Canada that talks about that, and that is also the case with informant privilege. So in short, there's case law that we have to abide by, and we have to do everything we can to protect that informant if that informant is providing privileged information and that there's safety concerns. So if we're going in that realm, there's things in place that we have to abide by. If it's a criminal investigation, these are complex investigations. These are decisions that we make. We don't make alone in a vacuum. We look at the circumstances. We also engage our Crown Attorney. So I just want to give you some comfort knowing that we're not just going to release information that would potentially harm an individual, a victim, an informant.
I appreciate that, and believe it or not, I was not really actually being specific to women in this situation. I was actually just wondering overall what would happen in that
Yeah.
situation. And also, many people say I read too much into things, and probably I maybe went overboard, and I didn't mean to, I just really didn't understand, so
And that response is for men and women and
Yeah.
anybody.
thank you.
One thing I'll just add quickly, and it's a great point. If you're familiar with the Versadex system of privatizing the current system, this is basically the same system, just in a different format.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but there's no need in explaining. Sure. But thank you for that, and thank you for the time you gave me.
Thank you, Member Walker. Going back to the speakers list, I have Vice Chair Goss, followed by Member Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick follow-up, as I forgot to ask about body worn cameras. Is there a live feed feature on the body worn cameras? So for example, Dr. Lipsky, you'll remember I was out on a ride along on the night of the Kips Lane shooting. Obviously, there was a major incident there, a lot of moving parts. So I think of a situation like that where a live feed may be useful to command when decisions are being made. Do these body worn cameras have that feature? Is that something that will be deployed in LPS?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They do, and that would be the type of circumstance where that is a feature that would be used. It also, that promotes a great advancement for officer safety. If as an officer were in trouble and we needed to see what was happening to assist them, we can use that as well.
I would assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's a major step forward from where we are now, right? Because I would assume that the service would have been dropping equipment, trying to get a live feed in before, where now you have the ability to access that officer's body worn camera.
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
And one last question, on the Axon audit trail. Can you just explain that a bit more? Because, I think there's always a, misconception about who has access to these types of systems. Oh, the old adage, they're running my license plate, or, they have the ability to look into this. So can you just talk a little bit about that audit trail that's in place to talk about the protection of that data?
So that audit trail is built into the Axon DEMS environment. It's not something that we can turn off or turn on or manipulate. And everybody, right up to the chief, every single interaction you have within that DEMS system is recorded, logged, tracked, dates, times. We can see for any piece of evidence, we can pull up a log and see everybody that's accessed it, tried to access it, how long they accessed it, what parts of it they watched. It's very, very robust, very thorough.
That's fantastic. And I assume that there are regular audits being done of the system, not just waiting for problems to come, but just to make sure that data isn't being accessed appropriately.
Yes, there is.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goss. Member Stevenson.
Thank you for the presentation and your diligence and passion in moving this big project forward. As I'm watching it, I'm just wondering, is it being used to the LPS advantage in terms of training the new recruits that we're bringing in?
So we haven't reached new recruits yet. As this is still a project, we're training all the members as we deploy. And then once the current members are all trained, this will become a function of recruit training. So that this will just become a part of their onboarding when they arrive. They get their camera and they get trained. So that is something that's in the works at the moment as well. Yes.
And just as a follow-up, will it be a training tool to be able to review new recruits or something? Or would it just be used as for anybody else that was in that?
Use in training, our training unit has actually used this to their advantage in some scenario-based training to be able to review and see from an officer's point of view and then use it as a debrief. So yes, there's definitely an advantage to it there as well.
Great.
Thank you, Member Stevenson. Any other questions from the board with regards to this? I have a couple, but I've been waiting to the end. So anybody else have questions? Okay, so with regards to you talked about that we're in the preliminary stages of this. Is like this is early days in terms of the rollout, and you said there's anecdotal kind of feedback that you've been receiving, but we don't have the empirical evidence or data as of yet because we're just too early, right? Do you have a sense of a timeline when you would be able to report back to the board? Are we talking a year out when you have enough quantitative, qualitative data to assess the viability, the success, the feasibility of the project? And if so, and I'm not holding you to a specific date, but ballpark, are we looking 6 months, a year, 2 years? Like just a sense of when you have enough data amassed that you can come back and say, here's a report, here's the feedback from the first year, let's say.
So, again, a little bit tough just in that we don't know exactly what the rollout is going to look like. We have to remain cognizant that there may come a point where the number of cameras we've deployed starts to kind of reach our capacity to handle the disclosure and redaction, and then we have to manage that. But based on the way things are going and my optimism, I would think that by the end of this year, there should be enough cameras deployed and enough data coming in that we will be able to provide some of that information.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and when you come back, right? But just, I think you can judge by the degree of questions, the number of questions that the board has. There's a great deal of interest,
Absolutely.
even excitement in this, right? So I would be interested in having some report back on this when the time's appropriate. You talked about disclosure and redaction. That kind of feeds into my second question. You have recordings that are going to be captured, right? And so in terms of the retention policy, I imagine it would probably be divided. So if something that's involved in an active litigation matter, obviously the retention policy would probably dictate that it would be held longer than if it was just a routine traffic stop where, there's like, what's the, in broad kind of strokes, what's the retention framework for this type of data?
So it varies obviously on the different types of footage evidence that we have, but all of our retention periods are in line with, VIPA and VIPA and the different legislations that govern that.
Okay.
But there is quite a wide range, but everything is retained in line with all the relevant legislation.
And for speaking about FIPA, so right now, if somebody wants to put an FOI into the service and say, I want this record or this, whatever it is, they put in an FOI request under FIPA, this would be dealt with, I imagine, the same, right? If a member of the public or an individual or members of the media wanted to, right, it would just be an FOI request that would come in. It would be dealt with similarly, I imagine.
Yes, the process to make an FOI request has not changed. This is just one more piece of evidence that may or may not be available.
Perfect. And my last question, Inspector Lipsky, just deals with, and it kind of builds upon what Member Walker was talking about during her. Is there kind of a proactive notification statement that's made? And so let's say it's a routine traffic stop, right? And officer approaches the vehicle. Is there? I'm truly asking out of curiosity, is there a statement that's made proactively by the officer to notify the individual that they are being recorded? Not seeking consent per se, but just hey, you're being recorded, or is that just an implied understanding that, well, now these body worn cameras are warned and assume you're being recorded?
So the default position of the training the officers have received is to give that, I don't even want to call it a warning, but that notice that people are being recorded. Understanding though that there are circumstances that will arise where that's not feasible, whether it's for safety reasons or emergent situations. But ideally, yes, the officers will provide that notification.
And then, so I said that was my last question. My actual last question just deals with training. It's new technology. Everybody has to get accustomed to it, just in terms of, is it, I thought there's obviously additional trainings are kind of, you gotta imagine there's regular training that will take place as the program, project rolls out, and maybe new technology, new developments, and new things are happening, just kind of continual ongoing training for service members.
Yes, and that's part of the change management piece, recognizing that a lot of the modifications or updates that we make, that's from member feedback, that's from
Yeah.
users coming back and saying, hey, you know what? I really think that this might work better, or we ran into this issue. So at the moment, a lot of that is just, it really comes down to Chris and I being engaged with the front line and messaging things out and attending parades. And
Yep.
but all of this is being retained and gathered so that we have a complete training plan moving forward for when we have full implementation. And this is really no longer a project.
I appreciate, thanks, Inspector Lewis. Chair doesn't typically ask questions. We kind of facilitate the conversation, but I'm very interested in this, and very
I appreciate
very
that.
excited about that as well. So, those are my questions. Unless anybody has any follow-up questions, Chief.
Chair, through you, I'm gonna put Maddie on the spot and
Okay.
just want her to make sure that the board is aware of the parameters of FIFA and the freedom of information available to anybody who is seeking to look at body cam footage. So do you mind just providing an overview for the board?
So the record that is created from a body worn camera recording is treated the same as a paper record. So members of the public who come in and make an access request under MFIPA, the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, they have a right of access to their own personal information. Third-party personal information is always redacted from what they receive. So there's a variety of exemptions in the act that are applied to redact out information that identifies third parties, or that identifies any confidential law enforcement techniques or practices. So for example, if I heard that Ms. Santos was arrested involving somebody else, I can't just walk into a police office and walk into a police service and say, I'd like to make an access request for that occurrence, because it doesn't contain my own personal information. I don't have a statutory right of access to that information. The same would apply for members of the media. The media can't make an FOI request for information that contains personal information of third parties. They have to have some type of nexus or connection to have a statutory right under that regime. So it's treated no differently than what you would see with paper records. And Member Walker, with your inquiry of if somebody provided information that they didn't want someone else to know, somebody else can't come in and ask for that information. There's protections in place under that legislation to make sure that third parties aren't identified and that they remain anonymous. There's already a well-existing regime and case law and direction given from the Information and Privacy Commissioner directing law enforcement on how to navigate these types of requests. And that same framework is applied to video records. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I'll just thank you, Maddie, and I'll just, for the board's awareness, as the chief, I can authorize the release of body cam footage if I deem appropriate. So if there's a need for public safety, if I have concerns for protection, I can give that authorization. And obviously, releasing the body cam footage, there'd be a reason for it, and we'd make sure that privacy interests are protected.
Very good. Any last questions for Inspector Lipsky, Chris, Chief, anybody?
I'm so sorry.
No, I wasn't sure if you asked, if you wanted to ask.
No.
You're good? Okay. All right, then I would say thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the information and answering the questions, and looking forward to having you back at some point.
Our pleasure.
I
Thank
don't know if
you.
you're looking forward to it, but we are.
No, we appreciate the opportunity to share that information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on in the agenda. We have Deputy Chief Fastine. We have the Professional Standards Grants Chief Administrative Investigations, so a number of SIU reports as listed in the Oh no, did I miss something? Oh, yeah. Number 4, agenda item number 4, corporate services, so a collection of identifying information report. Looking over to you, Deputy Chief McSween. Deputy Chief Bastine, I put you on notice, you're next. All right.
Thank you, through you, Chair. This report is the mandated yearly report, for the collection of identifying information in certain circumstances. And it's pursuant to Ontario Regulation 400/23. So each police service must prepare an annual report regarding the statistic in regards to that legislation. And if you refer to page 2, there were no regulated interactions as defined by the Ontario regulation, and the contents of the annual report to the board are made under section 15 of the regulation that requires them to be reported annually.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Chief Bastine. Okay, so I'm going to come to you. Any questions with regards to the data? Zeros right across the board, right? Any questions with regards to the report for Deputy Chief McSween? Seeing none, so Vice Chair Doss is going to move a motion to receive the report. Seconder for that motion, Member Stevenson. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much, Deputy Chief McSween. Okay, now moving on to agenda item number 5, being the SIU reports there.
To talk, because Elmo, this is not joined on as a participant.
Oh, Deputy Chief Bastine. Okay, is he?
He's on there, but he's only listening right now.
So he hasn't dialed in as like an active.
I think it's all in the general now.
I'll get it.
Yeah.
I'll give him the 70. And then make him sit right there. Well,
After it started.
all right, so we'll stand at ease for a couple minutes.
They haven't gotten to the end. Oh, sure, go ahead, yeah. Yeah. I should roll it. It's on, so you can say that.
Yeah.
Only been 20 minutes.
I tried, sorry.
It's over here.
If you want to move back, we'll do that. Thank you very much. So we're resumed now. So Deputy Chief Bastine, thank you for, even though you've been with us all day, but physically joining us right now. We're at agenda item 5. Let me know if you need a second or two just to get whatever you need up on the computer there.
Thank you, through the chair. So you have 4 reports submitted pursuant to section 8 of regulation 9024 of the CSPA. Anytime the SIU director investigates an incident involving the death, serious injury, or sexual assault of a person, or the discharge of a firearm at a person, the chief is required to conduct an administrative investigation into officer conduct, the policing service provided, and procedures that relate to the incident. So these reports are submitted in accordance with that requirement. Each of these highlights 4 separate incidents in which one or more sworn members of the LPS interacted with a member of the public and resulted in a serious injury to a person as defined in the Special Investigations Unit Act. Under that act, serious injury means an injury that is likely to interfere with the person's health or comfort and is not transient or trifling in nature. In the case of the first incident on May 19th, 2024, officers were dispatched to the area of Dundas Street and Clark Road after a woman contacted us to report that an individual appeared to be inebriated and was causing a disturbance near her home and then a threat to stab her and her child. Officers encountered the complaint, the individual, and moved to taking into custody for uttering threats and on the strength of an outstanding warrant. The male fled into a home and refused to come out, so officers contained the residents while they spoke with him to persuade him to exit. He indicated he was going to exit, but instead jumped from a second-story window, trying to scale down a drain pipe. The fall resulted in an injury, which was, I believe, a fracture, which resulted in the investigation by the SIU. That investigation was concluded with the director having found no basis upon which to lay to suspect any criminal wrongdoing on the part of the officers. And our investigation conducted by PSB determined that the conduct, procedures, and service provider were all adequate and in keeping with legislation and procedures. The second case involves a case in June of 2024, in which a complainant reported a male adult unconscious in a parked car. When officers attended, they entered into an investigation for impaired operation of a vehicle. He was transported to cells, and during the time while he was being tested for drug impairment, his condition deteriorated to the point that where EMS was called and he was taken to hospital. At hospital, he was admitted with a suspected overdose, which he survived. However, the hospital admission is what triggered the SIU investigation. That investigation found that, again, the officers, there was no basis upon which to suspect any wrongdoing on the part of the officers, and the resulting PSB investigation that followed found no evidence of misconduct, found the procedures were provided sufficient guidance to members, and that the service provided was adequate. The third case, another custody injury. This one occurred on June 24th, 2024, following a robbery, a call to an armed robbery at Canada Computers. A male armed with a knife had attempted to steal property. Officers were dispatched. He fled in a car, and officers followed the car, stopped the car. However, the male fled and then fled on foot from a police service dog and the handler. The dog, the individual refused to comply with the officer's commands, so the dog was released, and in apprehending the male, bit the male in the arm, which resulted in a substantial amount of stitches, requiring the SIU's investigation. That investigation found no basis upon which to suspect criminal wrongdoing on the part of the officers, and our investigation similarly found no basis to suspect or no evidence of misconduct. Procedures were in keeping with legislation, and service provided was adequate. Finally, the last case is the case, again, another case of officers attempting to arrest a violent male. This individual had been seen in someone's backyard attacking their dog with an object. Officers found the male in front of the home as they arrived. He refused to comply with direction to drop the weapon. And as they moved in to arrest him, he resisted. So at one point, a conducted energy weapon was discharged. It was effective and resulted in the male falling to the ground and striking his head. He was taken to the hospital, at which point he was found and suffered a fracture to a bone in his face, which again triggered the SIU's investigation. In that case, like the others, there was no basis for the SIU to lay or suspect criminal wrongdoing on the part of the officers, and our professional standards investigation found procedure had been complied with and was sufficient to provide guidance to officers. There was no evidence of misconduct, and the service provided was adequate. Subject to, those are 4 separate reports. However, the recommendation is all the same, that the board receive each for its information.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Bestine. Questions?
No, I was gonna move.
Oh, okay, we'll get to that. So does anybody, I have a question, but does anybody have questions for Deputy Chief Steve with regards to any of the reports that were just provided? It's my only question is, just deals with the one where there's an individual that we take into custody, he's in medical distress. And then his, I don't know which one, I think it was the first one, to be honest with you, let me just double check it, is Board Report 2502 EA05. So this is the one while you're bringing it up. There's a call into the police, there's a complainant unconscious in a vehicle on Commissioners Road East, right? So that's the one that I'm referencing there. So my question isn't even about the specifics of this case, it's just more of a process type thing. So generically speaking, we take somebody into custody. Maybe they're inebriated, maybe they're high, maybe they're in some degree of medical distress. And we realize that. Is it regimented how often we check up on those individuals before we make a decision in terms, or is that just a reasonable assessment of the circumstances and say, okay, well, this person seems to be in a medical distress, we have to get them to, the hospital, or whatever? Or is this something where it's, we have a policy or procedure or something that says, well, every 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, we have to do regular check-ins? So just curious what.
There is a procedure for cell block checks.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head the time frame, however, that's for somebody that's actually lodged in custody.
Yeah.
In this case, this involved an individual who was still interacting. The drug impaired investigation was still being actively actioned. So a drug recognition expert trained officer was interacting with the individual. It was during the course of that interaction that the officer observed the decline in the individual's inability to really engage or comprehend what's going on. But I guess to answer your question, it's a little bit different in this case. As somebody who is lodged in a cell, there are periodic checks conducted as one means of mitigating against what we know from studies, not only done here, but elsewhere, that people who are brought into the police custody are often, if the term is suffering with is accurate, but they have multiple comorbidities, which I understand to mean several complicating factors that could threaten their health and well-being.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which is why we have those procedures in place.
Yeah, and that's, I think you've answered my question, which is that when they're in our care, control, and custody, there's, I think you've answered it, which is yes, we do reasonable check-ins and assess.
That's right. So there's video monitoring. There's also not patrols, but essentially rounds that are conducted by a cadet or another officer in the cell block to check on each prisoner in custody.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I don't think there was any other questions, so can we just do a kind of a blanket motion to receive all 4 reports? We don't really do these pros and promotions. So who was moving that motion? I saw somebody was.
No, I am. Okay.
So Member Walker, you're gonna move a motion to receive SIU report 24 OC 1213, 24 OC 1246, 24 OC 1267, and 24 OC 1358. Over. Thank you. And that's second. Yeah. And seconded by Vice Chair Goss. Anyone opposed to receipt of those reports? Seeing none, that motion is carried. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6. Dealing with just the verbal reports here. I have 2 very brief reports. I just wanted to, even though it feels like it happened like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I just want to say thank you to the chief and the administration to start off with about the Chiefs Gala, which was just an incredible inaugural event that we had in London, unlike anything that it's the first time we've ever done it in London. I know that might be more commonplace for services out in the GTA, and I imagine Chief, you might talk about it during your Chiefs program, but I just wanted to say on behalf of the board, what an incredible event, what a like an inspiring evening where we get to celebrate and recognize police excellence in our community, and whether it was the video kind of montages that were taking place or just the recognitions of the incredible work that our service members do. Like as evidenced by the meeting today, more often than not, when we're talking about policing, it's usually, oh, there was an incident or there was a crisis or there was something, negative that took place. It was very heartwarming to have an entire evening dedicated to just celebrating the positive and the brilliant work that our service members do on a day-to-day basis. And I wanted to say first to you, thank you for bringing that initiative to London. I think it was a resounding success. If somebody had said a year ago when the planning started that you were gonna have 1,200 people in a packed room, you probably would have laughed you out of the room, right? But what an incredible thing. And I wanted to say, in addition to that, thank you to the board, but two members in particular, Vice Chair Goss and Member Bransco, who were the board representatives on the planning committee. How many of you guys watched The Office, but it felt like the planning part of the planning committee, right? And then the members from the members of the service that were on the planning committee who remind me, there's like 4 Davids and right, so what
Well, duplicate names.
right. I would pop in from time to time on some of those planning session meetings, and like there wasn't a detail that was like the minutia, everything from sponsorships, for YOU and the Canadian Mental Health Association, when it came to seating, when it came to logistics, when it came to all of that stuff. I just wanted to say thank you to the incredible work that you did, Ryan and Nancy, in terms of doing that. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize, and I know she hates it, so I'm going to do it about that, Sam Santos. Sam Santos, who is a superstar among superstars, who I've never, even at the Lewis Curry thing last night, like, you can't sit still. Like I know it's all right. So, but I just wanted to say thank you to Sam Santos as part of the the service for all the incredible work you do, not just on the Chiefs gala, but stuff that you do every day, right? Like literally every day that you make the Chief look good. And sometimes that's easy and sometimes not so much. But I want to say thank you to you. But Ryan and Nancy in particular, you guys, I know the amount of time, effort, and resources you put into this thing. It's incredible. And so just get ready for next year because it's going to be even bigger and brighter there. So thank you on behalf of the board. I alluded to the second thing, which was the Louis Curray Awards that happened last night. I was honored to be joined by Vice Chair Goss, Member Walker, Member Stevenson, Executive Director Johansson at the Louis Curray Awards. I think of all the things, all the events that we get to attend over the course of the year, whether it's, I love the swearing in ceremonies, but honestly, there's a special place in my heart for the Louis Curray Awards. By way of background, Louis Bud Curray was the first Black officer ever employed by the London Police Service. He was started in 1951, I believe, as the first officer. And this is really a recognition of his legacy, the work that he's done, and to open doors and create opportunities through his example for the service. And so it was an excellent evening. We heard from Chief Trong, we heard from members of the Curray family, but first, primarily, we heard an incredible keynote address by Deputy Chief McSween, who really Deputy Chief McSween, who gave the keynote address last night at the Louis Curray Awards, who gave a passionate and articulated, just a excellent, incredible keynote address that had people. It was a standing ovation. I want to embarrass you, right? Because that literally a standing ovation, right? Based on that, and so to share your story and your example and your lessons, it was an inspirational evening and capped off in large part by your keynote address. And I just want to say thank you again on behalf of the board for your leadership and for your example for everything that we do to advance the Chief's vision and the organization for the London Police Service. So thank you very much, Deputy Chief McSween, for that. And you know what, that's that insofar as the chair's report. I'll defer everything else to the next board meeting when we have some more substantive things that I want to talk about there. But that is the chair's report. I don't know if members have any questions with regards to any of that, but that's it. Seeing none, I will move on to a much more exciting report. Executive Director Johansson, do you Do you have a report for the board?
Brief, you might have seen, I randomly placed a media release from the Peel Police Service Board into your packages. This is it is about an external review that they had done on their governance policies from a human rights lens. And the reason I wanted to put it in is because I think it's important to highlight some of the really good work that's going on in this province that we can pull from. And I know that this is the direction that this board wants to go in as well. The report it's a bit longer, so I didn't include it, but it is public and it's available online. And it's something that, I was away, so I didn't have time to go through it yet piece by piece. But it's something that we'll also be able to use and take into consideration when we move forward and build up our policies and our processes.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Any questions for Executive Director Johansson with regards to the report? Seeing none, now on to the most exciting report. Chief Tai Chung, your chief proposal.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'll just add about the gala, and we're very proud of that historic night. But I'd like to stress again the incredible support from Member Branscombe, Vice Chair Goss, and yourself, and quite frankly, the entire board, with right from the get-go, supporting the vision, the plan, and being heavily involved to support Sam and the team and everyone who's done so much incredible work. And we are very lucky, and we recognize that the tremendous support from the board with all the community events and opportunities that we take to build trust within the community. So if you can think about the objectives of the gala was to recognize and celebrate our members. That's what that was for. Check mark, we did that. The second part was to celebrate with our community. Invited the community in. We wanted the community to be a part of this. You're only going to be able to strengthen trust if you open the doors, and we do try to do that as often as we can. Check. And the third, as just as important, was to raise funds for 2 local charities. That was the 3 goals, and we did that. And there will be a report coming to the board next month with the final results in the financials. But I can tell you, and I think the board should be very proud of this, preliminary calculations, and we're still finalizing, but we're gonna be in the area of $250,000. And that's pretty good for the first gala. And then we give that back to the community, right? And we committed to 2 incredible organizations led by Steve Cordes and Pam Tobin, YOU and CMHA Thames Valley. So we can't wait to finalize that, get the report to the board, and have seek the board's approval to donate those funds. So very happy about that, and very proud of our membership and our organization. And the beautiful thing is the overwhelming feedback was from the organization and our members, is that they felt proud and their families felt proud, and that was the goal. So I just want to thank the board for your support on that. And we recognize the team, and there's a lot of people that we didn't recognize that night that we're still recognizing. So we're very happy, and just thank you for that. And it was great for the community. And with that, there are things that we are going to ask the board for your support, so that we can do another one next year to make this annual, and that we want to put a couple policies and recommendations in place that we need the board's guidance on. So that'll be for the next board meeting for your approval. The second update I will share is our open drug strategy that we have made very public that we intend to implement. So I would give an update to the board that within the next 4 weeks, The intention is to engage the community, myself and His Worship Morgan, to connect with the community and media and give them an opportunity to hear about the phased approach of the strategy. So that is within the next 4 weeks, we intend to do that. We're finalizing the drug strategy as we speak. There's a few things that we need to iron out, and we're really making sure that the community is involved with this strategy. The third update that I will share with the board, on February 5th, there was an incident that occurred at the Boys and Girls Club here in our community. And I will share with the board, I think the board is aware of that incident. And ultimately, that incident involved our officers responding to the Boys and Girls Club, and they had made an arrest of a 16-year-old youth. The investigation remains an ongoing investigation, ongoing prosecution. The charges were laid. With respect to the YCGA, I'm trying to be very careful that the information that I share doesn't compromise the prosecution of the identities or the identity of the individual. But I will share that there had been some criticism of our police officers and our organization as to how we responded as a police service. And the criticism ultimately involved with, some members of the community of the belief that we responded with excessive force. And the excessive force amounted to the presence of firearms and some long guns that our officers carry. I will share with the board that sometimes the community may not know all the circumstances of the information that we have. And on the face of it, is very quick to judge on how our officers respond. I can tell you that I've reviewed the incident. I can tell you that I had zero concerns about how our officers responded. And in fact, I will tell you from the moment the 911 call came in to the 3 to 4 minutes it took for our officers to respond, to the additional maybe 4 minutes it took for our officers to make an arrest. I am very proud of how our officers responded, because the information that we had was that we had some serious concerns. There was an individual that was going to use a firearm in a place where there are children. So I would expect our officers to respond as quickly as they can. Our officers put themselves into harm's way going into a situation that all they know is that they want to make sure the kids and the community is safe. And they did it very quickly and nobody was hurt. So I want to share that with the board for your awareness that I understand some concerns from the community can occur on the face of it. And sometimes there's some community members, no matter what you do, they're very critical of the police. But I can assure you that I would not be happy if our officers sat and waited just because they were concerned of how people would perceive them to do their job. They have a duty to protect life, and they did that. And they did that quickly and courageously. So I wanted to share with the board an update with that incident. The next update I'll share with the board it involves one of our members who I had suspended this week. And the member was suspended with pay. I can tell you, I can tell the board that the investigation is being undertaken by the Ottawa Police Service. I can also share that I have to wait until the conclusion or an update from the Ottawa police service with that investigation. Because of the information that is ongoing, I've had the responsibility and the ability to suspend that officer pending the investigation that is proceeding. As a chief, I have the ability to suspend the officer under the CSPA if I suspect misconduct. Mind you, misconduct investigation has not commenced, but I have the ability to suspend. And I just want to make sure the board's very clear that under the CSPA, I do not have the authority to suspend this officer without pay. I'm not saying that I would do that in this circumstances anyway, but I want to make sure the board is very clear. Legislation in these circumstances gives me no authority to suspend without pay. Subject to any questions from the board, those are my verbal updates.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the chief with regards to the update? Yeah, member Stevens.
I just have a quick question on the engagement regarding the open drug strategy with the community and the media. Anything more you can share about that? So when we say the community, I just want to be clear on who that might be.
Yeah, so I've taken the strategy and I've met with the CDAC committee, is the Community Drug and Alcohol Committee, and it's led by Dr. Alex Summers and Scott Portis are the co-chairs of that committee. Number of community organizations are part of that committee, and that was the appropriate place for me to present the strategy and discuss the strategy. The committee is fully aware, and we've received feedback from the community and the organizations. So we're still going back and forth a little bit with it. We need to operationalize it and parse out a few other areas. And then there's two other community organizations that I really want to sit down and speak to. So I can't give you an exact time, but I can tell you within the next 4 weeks, we hope to have it in place and start rolling that out. And within that 4 weeks, Councillor Stevens said, we hope to get more information to the community and the media.
Thank you.
I have a question, but I'll wait to see if anybody else has a question. Staying on, so I would just want to come back to the briefing you just gave about the member that was recently suspended with pay. So just a point of clarification, is it the case, and I know I'm not even asking about this specific matter because I know it's active and I'll look for information on that, but more generally speaking, is it the case that when a member is on suspension pending investigation, that like for all suspensions, that the CSPA mandates that there's pay for any member that's being suspended pending investigation? Is that the case?
That's correct. There's sections within the CSPA that allow the chief the ability to withhold pay, suspend withhold pay. But those requirements, those sections are very clear. One of the preconditions that allow me to do that is if the member is convicted of a criminal offense and receives a jail sentence, right? Obviously, that doesn't apply to this case. If the member is charged with a serious criminal offense off duty, and the Crown elects to proceed by indictment. So these are certain conditions that will allow me to suspend without pay, but we're nowhere near that. And I don't think the community fully understands the legislation, the new legislation, CSPA versus the PSA. It has provided the chief a little bit more of opportunity to suspend and withhold pay, but it's still, there's guidelines there that prohibit me from when I can do that.
So like a certain threshold has to be met before you can even entertain them. Okay,
Yes.
that's the clarification I'm looking for in terms of the legislative requirements of that. So Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, I want to say thank you very much to the chief for the verbal report there. As there's no new business on the agenda, so we'll look for a motion to adjourn to our next meeting, which is when? March 20. Okay, sorry. 20th. March 20th. Mr. Doss, seconded by member Stevenson, and all opposed. You're officially adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, like I. Certain emergency.
Oh, really? Yeah.